Greetings, St. Paul's. Blessings on this Thursday, the last Thursday of this year's season of Epiphany. The psalm appointed for today in the daily lectionary is Psalm 83. O God, do not be silent. Do not keep still, nor hold your peace, O God. For your enemies are in tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their heads. As I think about how we live in relationship with God, I think of how sometimes we ask God to speak to us. And I wonder if we do honestly want to hear everything that God has to say to us and all the ways in which God is calling us to live and to serve. Because if we're honest with ourselves, we don't always want to hear exactly the truth of what God has to say about us and about how we are to go about living our lives and being in relationship with others. We may choose to think that maybe that kind of perfect living and relationship with God is something that only the saints can do. And I would actually want to question that thought as well. Because I believe that what makes a person a saint is not that they never question God or that they were always in perfect relationship with God, but rather that when they heard the voice of God and God spoke to them in ways that they either didn't understand or didn't want to respond with the word yes to, the saints struggled with that openly and honestly, and they were willing to battle with themselves into how to come about working with themselves to find a clear path forward to be able to say yes to God, to the ways in which God was calling them each in their particular time and place to be God's presence for God's people. I think that this is the invitation we have as well. It is the realization that relationships require work. Relationships require give and take. And God is always giving and taking from us. The question is, are we willing to really spend the time to listen and understand the voice of God? There's a word that we use in church that is called discernment. Discernment is about trying to work through the process of understanding the voice of God. It is hard work because God's mind is so much greater than our own that the words that we have learned throughout our lives will never be enough, in no matter what languages we have learned, to fully embrace the fullness of God's message, of God's mind. But in discernment, we seek each and every day to gain more clarity. To gain more clarity, not only of God's mind, but of God's mind for us, the desires of God's heart for us, and the ways in which God is calling us to be. It is that daily journey, that daily growth process that leads us to the possibility of a life of sainthood, or at least to the minimum, a life of better relationship with God, our Creator and our Redeemer. So, my beloved, not only as we come through the end of this season of Epiphany, but even more so as we enter next week, the season of Lent for this year, and then the celebration of the new life that we find in Jesus Christ and His Easter. I pray that we're able to stop and listen more closely to how God is speaking and what God is saying. We talk about the still, small voice of prayer. But if we spend the time listening, I believe that we will find that God speaks in a voice that is very loud and is very clear to those who are willing to discern the voice of God in the world and within us. Blessings to you, St. Paul's, and may the Spirit that lives within you give you the wisdom and the power to hear how God's voice is speaking to you.